Hello all, and a very warm welcome back to our final episode for 2025 on A Little Bit of SaaS. This episode, we are going to dive into the future of Strata Insurance and how technology and AI can complement and enhance service offerings to its customers. I'm joined by Mitchell Lipscombe, Chief Operating Officer at BAC Insurance Brokers, who specialize in Strata Insurance. Mitch brings over 14 years of industry experience and a passion for driving impactful change. In this episode, Mitch shares with us very generously how BAC Insurance Brokers' ambition is shifting the standard of excellence in insurance, the importance of trust and empathy in client relationships, and how technology, especially AI, is shaping the way that they serve and support their customers. Our conversation aims to provide unique insights into the challenges and opportunities facing the Strata insurance sector, the evolving role of leadership when it comes to influencing change, and practical ways BAC Insurance Brokers are embracing innovation while staying true to their core values. If you're curious about the intersection of people, technology, and purpose-driven growth, this is a conversation for you. Enjoy. What excites you about the future of BAC Insurance Brokers and your role in it?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. This is exciting. What excites me about BAC's future, I think, is our ambition, right? And I've thought and I've reflected quite deeply on that. You know, I've always or historically struggled to think about or put my finger on vision, because often that has quite, in my view, a bit of a textbook pressure that it needs to be grand and so perfectly articulated. A good friend and coach of mine actually recently encouraged me to reframe vision into ambition. It's just easier to accept, and it kind of worked for me. I'm excited about our ambition through the lens of, you know, it's kind of two-part. We have the growth side of it, but more importantly, we have the impact side, right? Long story short, we want to really reach a point of scale and growth where it's not just about scale or growth, but rather the influence it creates. I think we're in a really unique and challenging time in the Strata insurance space, and BAC being able to get to a point to influence the expectation or standard of excellence that consumers should seek to experience, and in doing so, influence the standard of partnership that Strata manager partners should seek or aspire to receive in the context of Strata insurance distribution.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's already so many things there that we could kind of pick apart, right? Like, so maybe you could elaborate a little bit more about what you mean about this, you know, the difference with the vision and ambition. I'm kind of curious on that.
So I think a lot of management consultants probably make a lot of money helping organizations conduct workshops to figure out what their vision is. And because there's so much, in my view, theory behind, you know, what needs to be embedded in a vision and how future focused it needs to be. People get lost in trying to meet those thresholds of what they're told a vision should include, so much so that you lose the impact of what it's for. And therefore, if you just move the word vision away and replace it with ambition, people seem to connect to that in a more authentic way. I've found that personally, and I found using that language shift internally gets a lot more engagement when we're talking about something so important.
Yeah, and so you're the Chief Operating Officer for BAC Insurance Brokers, specifically in Strata Insurance. So I can see how you, as a leader in your organization, like that is where you seem to see the change sort of like driving through, right? Like if you lead by example with this shift in mindset, then you can bring people along, right? And it excites them, it empowers them, and it perhaps has a higher chance of success with your mission. Is that what you would say?
Oh, I think it's, for me, really about connecting to the process authentically. And if I spent time going through the process of trying to connect with a theoretical definition of vision and struggle to do so, how am I going to take the people that the business leads on that journey with me? So going through that mental kind of sense-making process out loud sometimes helps people engage with the journey in a more authentic way that allows them to connect to where our vision's taking us.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing, right? Like, and I feel like from what I've learned about you, Mitch, like you have this sort of aura and presence about you that is I wouldn't have you on here if I didn't think that way. But yeah, no, like I think you bring this sense of excitement and energy and that forward thinking mindset, and it's rare that you come across people like that. I'm really not surprised that you are in the position that you're in, and I see a future where you continue to grow through that. And hearing this sort of now, this is what I'm excited about learning, and I hope the listeners are too, right? Like it's like a little bit of a step inside the mind of what drives you, right? And then what then you're doing with BAC, and then what BAC are doing with your industry. So of those things there, what stands out the most for you there?
Well, if I was to unpack, well, thank you for saying everything you said, but if I was to unpack that, you're kind of asking me about my perception of leadership, I think, and how that intersects with BAC's pathway. If I was to respond to that, I'd probably approach, just to avoid personal vulnerability, BAC first, right? I mentioned what our ambition is, and I think our target market, that's so Strata Insurance. Strata, by the way, is just a form of property ownership in Australia. Think apartment buildings, townhouses, shopping centres, and similar. Mm-hmm. We're at a unique period of time where we've come off the back of a really challenging time. We've had an extraordinarily difficult insurance market environment. We've had some media scrutiny in the Strata insurance space. We've had subsequent regulatory intervention. And if I reflect on all those things, and if I think about the intersection that we play out, which is somewhat on the shoulder of the insurance space, somewhat on the shoulder of the Strata insurance market, there's challenges in both. But through those challenges, I think there's a lot of opportunity, right? What is demanded now and entrenched by either self-regulation or actual regulatory intervention is an expectation of trust. Fortunately, BAC spent 30 to 40 years curating trust in everything that we do. So for me, if I take the language that I'm talking about in the context of ambition and try to translate that into strategy, the unique thing is we've got the trust there. It's really about figuring out how to scale that, right? Strata needs scale. Strata demands trust. We've got trust. The question is how to scale through, I guess, uplifted technology, better partnerships, and always reevaluating our service design for the needs of the customers now and the future.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that's obviously, so, you know, our podcast here is all about sort of talking about technology and how that can be connected to business outcomes. And so we'll get to that in a moment. But one of the key things that I heard there was that there's a sense of need in the market. There's an opportunity to scale that need and make sure you're servicing, you know, as many as you can at the highest quality you possibly can. And that's what we do at Solentive. You know, we try and really understand our clients so we can understand their clients or customers or whatever you want to call them, right? To really understand the industry, to make sure that what you're doing, and then when you bring in technology, when you've got to make sure what you're doing is actually driving those outcomes. And I love the passion that it brings for you. And you mentioned BAC has had 30 to 40 years of building trust. What about your experience in BAC, like, and building trust and all that? Like, how does that resonate here?
So I've been at BAC for about 14 years. And what I have learned through that period is the importance of embedding trust into everything we do, right? As an insurance broker that holds an Australian financial services license, we have to work in the client's best interest. And I think embedding that into every single decision that we make, even though we have a statutory obligation to do it, really forms a good foundation of service design and how we engage with both our marketplace and our target market.
Yeah, so I guess like you've been able to navigate through the what did you say, the statutory requirements, regulations, those sorts of things.
Yeah, well, like insurance broking and financial services at large is still dealing with the output of the Hayne Royal Commission into misconduct into financial services. So that's one layer of the regulatory intervention that we are constantly adapting to. Because our target market is Strata and is going through something which feels almost similar, I think having the perspective or looking at everything through the lens of consumer outcome and trust actually enables us to adapt to those regulatory interventions a bit more easily because we have more empathy toward the reasons that the interventions exist.
Yeah, and so when you say empathy, what are you specifically talking about there that you're really connecting with your clients on?
Well, if we think about empathy through the lens of understanding the feelings of another, we operate in a burgeoning marketplace, you could say, right? We have, in New South Wales, it's expected that half of our population will live in Strata by 2040, which is a lot.
That is a lot.
A lot of the output of the media kind of scrutiny has really brought to light that there's a lot of distrust and opaqueness in the way that the sector operates. So if I think about, firstly, the exhaustion behind constantly adapting to regulatory intervention, but then I think about the importance of the customer, and it just allows me to better empathize as to why we're constantly reacting, because we need to do better and we have a duty to those markets to be better.
So it's a real understanding of like what the experience is for your customers, so then they can essentially trust you in a situation that might be, you know, vulnerable and fear-based and all these things happening, right? There's a lot of noise, it sounds like, from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, there is actually. And I've been saying frequently at the moment, there's so much noise right now. And I can see so many stakeholders in the Strata insurance ecosystem getting a bit frustrated and certainly exhausted. And I definitely agree those conditions exist. My concern with not looking at it as current noise is it can be all consuming. But I'm of the view staunchly that a lot of the good work happens after we overcome these challenges, right? Insurance intermediation needs to constantly evolve and adapt as the market becomes bigger and more sophisticated. I'm certain we'll talk about tech in a moment, but consumers are going to expect that we overcome our own inefficiencies to deliver better. And so many people are stuck reacting to the current challenges, as are we, by the way. However, I think it's important to take a bit of a dual lens to think about the challenges now, but also the challenges for tomorrow.
Yeah, and so that kind of brings up the idea of, I guess, the reactive and proactive kind of mindset, right? Like, and it sounds like your industry really involves a certain amount of, well, I guess you're easy to fall victim of the reactive stuff and not be able to do the proactive stuff.
Yeah, that happens all the time, and I think, and I'm certain that our space is not unique in this context, but we do insurance. We do insurance on behalf of customers. So business as usual for us is responding to the needs of the customer. And that will always take priority, I expect, over taking a moment out of that mindset, that reactive mindset, and putting it in a longer term future-proofing mindset.
So then would I be right to say that part of what you offer and what BAC Insurance offers is that peace of mind to know that they can trust you to then be, that partner, that proactive thinker, that, it's almost like I feel a sense of safety, maybe it is, that you're looking to give to those customers?
To respond to that question, I'd probably do some more context setting about who we're serving, right? Our service design needs to really consider the duality of how we operate. We get our services to the end consumer via distribution partners, which are Strata managers. So therefore, everything we do needs to really be designed in a way that meets what excellence means for the consumer, which is good advice, which is advocating for them in the context of insurance procurement, claims advocacy, and I think creating competition for their insurance policies. That we package up to them and we get to them via the Strata managing agent, who we work in partnership with. And that partnership really needs to have embedded within it efficiency, I guess, support, trust, and a preservation of their brand as well.
Yeah, very nice. I'm conscious of time and I want to get a lot more out of our discussion. So I think this will be a good segue into talking about technology and how, I guess, you envision the future of technology, and especially on the AI front. How do you envision that enhancing and enabling you to service your clients and customers better? Yeah,
I look at AI through a couple of lenses. Firstly, I always need to do a bit of a check myself moment. I think a lot about the Gartner hype cycle in the context of AI. And I say that because some days I'm in this kind of like uplifted, happy, kind of energetic thing about the capability on our horizon. Then other days I find myself in that, trough of disillusionment, whereby I think, oh my gosh, this is changing so quickly. will we keep up with everybody in this context?
So it's almost like a cynical view on it, and
And I'm a bit of a kind of oscillating guy day to day, which my team will attest to. So I say that to sense check myself. And if I think about what we're seeing emerge now, one thing that's important for me to embed in my perspective is BAC is fundamentally an insurance intermediary. We will be that. We've been building that for 30 to 40 years, and that's what we'll build for the future. And I say that intentionally to call out that we're not going to transform into a tech company. We will be enabled by tech to do a lot more than we do now. So then I start to think about AI in our organization, and I look at it through two lenses, I think, like everybody probably does. Firstly, it's internal ops efficiency, right? And then secondly, it's more strategy. Right, the evolution of how we deliver what we do to an evolving marketplace. It's important for me to do that concurrently. What I find enterprise does not that well is focus immediately on efficiency gain. I don't necessarily think efficiency gain and margin uplift is an AI strategy, and I think focusing on that at the expense of bringing teams along on the strategy journey as well makes adoption much more difficult. If we think about trying to get AI adoption through organizations simply by forcing people to almost make certain roles obsolete without them understanding the strategic intent behind it is not the right pathway. We need to be looking at how we're reinvesting that margin to create consumer and stakeholder gain. When I say that, of course I mean shareholders, but I very much also mean our staff as well. Are we reinvesting into serving better? Are we reinvesting into doing what we do at a lower price point to have more of the market to enable our team to do more and have more work? So I look at it through that lens, and I think about the challenge, I suppose, through a strategic lens is we're trying to use AI to enable more scale and better consumer outcomes now, but we also need to do it thinking about how quickly this is all unfolding. Right? I read somewhere, and it's probably even obsolete by now, that the capability of AI is uplifting at a rate of 50% on an exponential basis every 6 months.
Yeah, I think it's even less, but yeah,
No
it's,
doubt,
it's,
right?
it's dramatical.
So it's near impossible to design now to plan for a future that is so unknown.
Yeah.
And I find that challenging and fascinating. And it's a conversation I don't think is had enough because we're very much focused on reactive efficiency gain.
So by that, do you mean that like, oh, if I invest a lot of time and energy and money and whatnot and resources into something that's AI, then 6 months later it could be a new AI and then we got to adopt that? Or is that kind of what you mean there? Or?
I think we need to be agile enough to create value now whilst being able to shift our strategy for how our external environment is shifting at the same rate of change.
Yeah, so because there's a buffet of options you can have with AI, isn't there? So it sounds like there's easy wins there that you know are going to serve now and probably for the foreseeable future. Like you don't see it changing, but there's so many other verticals or what have you. And you made a comment to me about like the idea of like there's today AI, there's tomorrow AI. There's strategic AI and operational AI. There's so many different sort of things, right? And then even within those, there's productivity for your staff members. There's, like use cases for your business, et cetera. Like there's so much there that people get so overwhelmed. So I think what I love about what you've brought to the table is that it's really proactive again, and it's forward thinking, right? It's really making sure you're also bringing people along for it and educating them at what your organization or business might be doing. And I guess I'm curious about how some of those conversations are going with some of those staff members that might be fearing perhaps that they might be losing their role or their value in the company. Like, how's that gone?
Well, what we've done thus far is I've been facilitating what we've been calling AI leverage workshops.
Okay.
Effectively, on a divisional basis, getting the entire teams together to workshop quick wins versus strategic bets versus don't bother, it's too difficult type stuff. And through that lens, creating a lot of psychological safety surround what we mean with AI and adoption. What I find is a super, super quick win, before even thinking about enterprise level, is the individual empowerment or capability that's enabled right now, right? And you can even just be like a GPT cowboy and demonstrate more value for yourself right now. And that's where I think both the individual and the organization can win, when we have individuals empowered, authorized with the right guardrails, of course,
Yeah.
to be uplifting their own AI capability, but in doing so, enhancing their general professional capability.
And what we're finding actually as a technology, advisory around this is that there's so much that needs to sort of be discussed when it comes to all this, right? And I think when it comes to, I guess, people's roles within all of that, some people, they don't want to make the change, right? It's about change management now, right? And there's a change leadership sort of discussion in there somewhere too, right? Because for someone to want to use a new tool or what have you, do they all just go and do it on their own? Mostly no. People are creatures of habit. We rock up to work, we log on, we do the same process every day until someone tells us not to, and then we get disrupted for a bit, and then we settle into a new way of working. So we really focus on that people and process side of things to make sure we bring people along from the very start to so-called finish or go live or whatever with any sort of new product. But the key thing is getting their buy-in. How do you find that as a leader?
Well, I think if we look at needing to connect with both heads and hearts, right? I think
there's that empathy again, by the way.
Well, a lot of people have said I'm not empathetic, so I'm curious that you observe that I am, which is great. I think a lot of people understand the logic of going down the pathway of AI exploration and adoption to create efficiency, to better enable people, to provide better services and uplift our overall offering. I guess if we look at the heart then, which is where we need to be very empathetic, is we need to really explore and understand actual or perceived risks of our constituents or our stakeholders, and overcome those risks in a way that I think allows people to understand that they remain in a safe environment. And a lot of the strategies, BAC and otherwise, are there to enable people to do either more higher value work or things that I guess they're more passionate toward. We've been trying to find with a lot of our team at the moment, we've been drawing lots of Venn diagrams, right? And on the top left kind of circle, we've had, what energizes you? And you and I spoke about flow before. When are you in flow? The other is what you're good at. The other is what BAC needs. And in a lot of circumstances, we're actually finding that kind of sweet spot in the middle that a lot of our team have been able to identify, which I think is quite exciting as we move into the future, because it demonstrates we are considering their interests, energy sources, what they're good at, making pretty clear the business needs something from that. But in those kind of co-created environments, I think it creates a place of space, but also allows us to be more empathetic and understand where our team wants to be working for the future. And that's where we can build a lot of our quick wins around our AI strategy around.
Yeah, there's so much there. I mean, I think the law industry kind of looks at this as there's finders and grinders in the law world, right? And then, maybe in other worlds, there's rock stars and superstars, right? And what I mean by this is there are people who, if you free up all the really mundane kind of things that you can automate for productivity, what would they actually do with that time, right? And there are people who would be like, I don't know what to do with that time, and that scares me because I've been doing these processes and flows for years, right? But then there are people like, oh my God, I don't have to do that anymore. Now I get to do this, and that's high value. So how do you see that?
Well, for us, and I mentioned about 10 minutes ago, what we've got is trust. What we've got is a fantastic team of capable insurance brokers who will fiercely advocate for their consumers. What we struggle with is how to scale that to the size of the market. There's 366,000 Strata plans who are potential clients for BAC. That's our addressable market at the moment. That's growing very quickly, right? Insurance broking is fundamentally a people job, right? We want to connect, we want to advise, we want to build trust, and we want to advocate. We need to really be able to enable people to do more of that with people, because we have so much administrative work currently holding that back.
So the high value for you is human-to-human connection.
100%.
Yeah. How confident do you feel it with your industry in terms of the types of people that work in your industries? If we get more face-to-face time, do you think that's going to really disrupt things, or do you see like it's going to be amazing for all the people that kind of work within that space?
Look, I think that's an interesting question, because what I think is going to happen concurrent to us enabling scale through efficiency gain through AI, like I said before, I think that's going to slightly shift how we interface with consumers. So it's definitely going to be people-to-people connection making, either at partnership or consumer level. But I think through the lens, I think your question was, how would the industry ecosystem more largely respond to this?
Yeah, like how will people, like at an individual level, like if I have an extra 4 hours a day because I've been automated for, using AI, well, what will I do with that, and how would I feel about that? Will people be excited by that? Will that create energy and excitement to be connecting human to human more often, like as the high value task?
I certainly hope so, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think one of the small wins from it is context. I think everybody enjoys their experience of work the more context they have of that work. Strata Insurance is, I don't know if it's unique, but because we intermediate between the consumer and the insurance company, but distribute via a Strata managing agent, we're very often one step removed from the consumer. What that means is, well, many things, but one of them is day-to-day context and understanding of the impact that our teams have on the Australian community is hard to understand because we have that removed nature of what we're doing. So the more that we can automate, AI, whatever it is, to be able to be on the ground, providing that advice, providing that advocacy and support in the time of need, I think the more everybody's working environment or experience is uplifted, right? We're going to almost create this flywheel of better understanding our markets, better having empathy toward our users or our customers, better partnering with our partners, and having a more enjoyable day-to-day.
Yeah, I love this. And I'm certainly on your side of the fence when it comes to this. I sometimes have my cynical hat on, which sounds like it's similar for you sometimes as well, where I'm like, oh man, when COVID happened and then now we've got AI, we've got all these things that have got put barriers to connect with us, with other people. And so now we become kind of introverted and we're coming out of that, but then now AI is like automating things. And it's like, I don't know, it's just, I think people are like a bit more afraid of that human contact because people are working at home more than ever before. And yeah, so I'm optimistic because I like people and I like being around people, but I do know, and I've seen in organizations, there are people who that terrifies them.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I haven't really thought about it until now. I've been drawing lots of, capability staircases recently. And when you express that, it makes me think, if we're endeavoring toward enabling more face-to-face connection, trust building, empathy, perhaps we do need to also consider the staircase we need to walk up to get to the point of enabling comfort and confidence in that environment. We'll add that as another job to the list. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and I think like I had someone else on the podcast here who was in recruitment, right? And he was sort of mentioning that even like, a lot of the technical roles in technology are being repurposed now, and they need to have more soft skills. So there's less software engineers and there's more, technical consultants, right? So you need to be able to communicate more. And that specific cohort of people, they struggle because like maybe their university degrees didn't give them soft skills. I didn't teach them those things because they're outdated now. So it's just interesting to see those changes, right?
And I think, we work in insurance, right? And most people will say, I fell into insurance. I believe most people stay because they start to identify the impact that what they do day to day has on either the community, the economy, or people. Similarly, I mentioned we shoulder two industries, insurance and Strata. I tend to think there's a lot of parallels to Strata in that context, whereby most Strata managers that I meet fell into that space and then started to see the real life impact they had on community. And I think if we, going back to leading from the head and the heart, if we go back to people's heart as to why you're staying here and what AI can represent through the lens of enabling you to demonstrate or be there for your customers that you've kind of indicated that you want to. I think that's a bit of an unlocked moment in time to be able to enable faster adoption.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it, man. I'm optimistic. Like I said, I'm on your side of the things, and I really feel that the more connection we can have, it's kind of demystifying or debunking the idea that AI is going to make us all like stop thinking and sit at home and play video games all day long and just zone out of life, right? We're just plugged into a matrix or something. So I'm more optimistic as a someone who really values human connection. And yeah, I worried during COVID, but I won't get into that. Yeah, just that disconnection, and what that does for our mental health, our spiritual health, and all those sorts of things. Look, this is great. I mean, I think there's something else that you kind of mentioned to me earlier around like exhaustion, and I think part of what you mean by exhaustion could be something to do with a lot of changes in your industry, whether it be for your customers or perhaps even your all the requirements and regulations. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more about what you meant by that comment?
What I mean is we're at this juncture where there's perpetual change. People have change fatigue. Albeit they have change fatigue at a moment where more change is required. So when I use the term exhaustion, I look at a lot of stakeholders in our ecosystem. A lot of our team have come off the back of one of the longest, hard or most difficult insurance markets on record. At the same time as being scrutinized by the media, sometimes having to reprove their value to their own customers and partners. At the same time as dealing with uplifted or more frequent regulatory intervention. Those conditions lead to exhaustion. The difficulty is finding a way to break through that exhaustion or support it in a way that enables the additional change that we need to make to continue to serve for the customers of the future and continue to endeavor toward our ambition, right? So we've got exhaustion on one hand, more uplift to happen, and trying to find a pathway between those two things sometimes is difficult.
Yeah, it would be difficult. And I guess like that kind of like makes me a bit curious again about your leadership role, right? Because I feel like when I'm imagining what it must be like for you, I imagine a sense of responsibility on your shoulders, right? You're already trying to do one thing for what your business is doing, but then also you're trying to bring a whole team of people along. And you've got quite a large team, I would say. So, how are you finding all that?
Look, our purpose is to improve the lives of everybody that we touch through protecting the places that people call home. The reason I say that in response to your question is the first part of that is we're very, very kind of obsessed by improving the lives of everybody that we touch. That's not just our customers, right? That's really the shared value type thing. And if we think about our team in that context, it's really the custodianship of their well-being, the custodianship of this moment of their career, which I think a lot of the leaders in BAC consider quite a profound part of their role. If I reflect on leadership in the context of BAC more broadly, and this is probably going to be less philosophical or reflective that you're seeking, but I take a lens that this is something from the Center of Creative Leadership. They say leadership is a process of influence that creates direction, alignment, and commitment outcomes. Through that lens, I think it helps me think about leadership through a bit more of a distributed way. As in, it's no one person's role at BAC to be the leader, right? I've got a boss, I lead people, it is what it is. But I think looking at it through that method allows me to think I'll perform better at contributing to leadership if I'm using influence, not always directly, to create direction, alignment, and commitment outcomes in the business. If people are well directed, if they're well aligned, i.e. they know what they're doing to get toward that direction or ambition or mission or whatever it is, and they're committed to get there, if that happens, leadership has happened, whether or not it was from me or from anyone else.
So you're humbly not taking any recognition, and you're sort of just recognizing that it is a collective mission to lead a team of people, right? And it kind of circles back to our initial point around what's not a vision maybe anymore. It's an ambition. Well,
I think it really is. Leadership happens. Obviously, it's influenced, but it's a collective experience.
Everyone's got to play their part, don't they?
Either they're followed, they're led, or they do both.
Right.
I think that was just a useful kind of thing for me because in absence of thinking about it through a distributed lens, I do think there is risk relying on any one grand person to be the fundamental leader everyone needs to have there. The more we distribute it, the more we de-risk, the more we co-create the leadership experience, and the more I observe, better outcomes happen through that co-creation.
And that's the thing too. I think people then feel empowered that they're being brought along for the journey, rather than, I think you mentioned a word earlier about being told what they're going to do, or told what the new product is that they're going to use, or whatever, right? Like you're sort of getting their buy-in to bring them along. Therefore, they get to own the win for themselves in their role and for the collective company and the customers, and everyone kind of wins, right?
Yeah, and I think you roll your eyes because I talk about flow all the time, right?
I don't roll my eyes in a negative way. It's in an aligned way. I love this. So what we're referring to for people listening is a book called The Art of Impossible, written by Stephen Kotler, and it's all about peak performance, just for context, yeah.
Yeah, so I think all the time about Stephen Kotler's motivation stack, right?
Yeah.
You need to have mastery, autonomy, passion, purpose, curiosity. I'm missing one, I think. But if those conditions exist, it's almost scientifically proven that you are in a higher condition of performance. I think Kotler also talks about burnout, right? And if I think about flow or the motivation stack and burnout, one thing that is common between them is a lack of autonomy, right? So I think if we have teams that are exhausted and we have external pressures that are relentless, if we take a different view of leadership that is less distributed and less co-created, sometimes we take away autonomy. And absence of autonomy is one of the conditions that I believe leads to burnout. So whilst it's kind of a leadership philosophy that I connect with quite well, I do see the value in it in the current context that we're dealing with in.
Yeah. Mitch, I could keep carrying on about the leadership stuff and the flow stuff for hours, but I'm conscious of time, and there's one last thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up today. But the leadership stuff, no, I won't ask it. I'll park it for now. But there's so much great stuff. If anyone's listening, definitely go and read The Art of the Impossible. It definitely underpins like a lot of really valuable insights as to behavior change, even if it's just for you as an individual or if you are leading as a group. So a lot of gems in there. But what I want to ask you is more around, I guess, like what does the future look like for BAC right now? Like, what are the next steps? What are the exciting improvements coming that you can share with us today?
That's a big one, actually. We're going through a lot of change at the moment. Our industry is going through a lot of change. We've just launched, like every single person has, the next 5-year strategy. Like I said before, that includes some quite robust growth endeavors, but that growth is a vehicle to us having more influence to try to become a bit of the standard. And when I say that, I know there's a lot of vulnerability in sharing ambitions in that context, partly because you're held to account, partly because your competitors know what you're doing. I think we're in a unique environment whereby all of us that operate in Strata Insurance have some heavy lifting to do through the lens of uplifting the consumer sentiment towards Strata Insurance, and therefore uplifting the consumer sentiment towards Strata in general. We've got hugely robust government housing targets that we're trying to meet. We've got population growth. If we can all do some uplift toward how our population views Strata, and then we get the population choosing Strata, it's really going to accelerate those housing targets. And therefore, whilst we'll have a short-term period of all competing, hopefully on consumer outcomes, that competition, in my view, will lead to a quicker moment in time where someone says, I choose to live in Strata. And that's the moment in time all of our markets get bigger. That doesn't answer your question, but I think...
Well, no, it gives me an overview of more of the industry and more of BAC's role in the industry. And what I hear, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's, well, we have a need. We see a potential future where there's more need, and there's enough fruit out there for all the insurance companies to kind of go for. And if we work together, we can not only have, like serve all those people, but also provide them a better way of living.
For sure.
Is that what you're...
And in doing so, making our collective addressable market bigger.
Yeah.
Right? So again, it goes back to that shared value thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all in all, I think it's exciting times.
Yeah, definitely. Look, Mitch, it's been great having you on here. I wish we could record for longer, but I'll have to get you on maybe another time in the new year when you've got a few other things in motion and we can see how things are going for you. But thank you so much for your time discussing just things around, I guess, what BAC are all about and what they're doing, what your role specifically is within that, your role as a leader. It's been really great discussing all those things. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, is LinkedIn the best place to find you? Or
Yeah, I'm a bit of a LinkedIn monkey, so always on there available.
Do you want to tell us about some of your stuff with the snakes and everything to get some more followers? Or
No, I'll put that in the past. But for context, I was dared to do the a charity challenge where I had to go in a bath with snakes. Thank you for allowing me to relive that.
Yeah, well, I'm just happy to have you here. I was a bit worried about our podcast recording when I saw that picture of you with the snakes. But look, thanks again, Mitch. I really appreciate your time.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you.